Why did you let him kill me? It was the clown. Make the clown go away.
North Dakota is probably not the first state people think about when it comes to urban legends and hauntings. Being in America's heartland seems too wholesome for all that, but don't let the prairie state fool you. No state goes without some darkness lurking, and in the Peace Garden state is no different. Join me today as we take a look at 10 urban legends and hauntings from North Dakota. Fort Abraham Lincoln housed military officers and their families, including Lieutenant Colonel Custer and his wife, Libby. They lived in their home on base until his death at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. Libby returned home to her family like the other widows and families, and a new cavalry troops and officers were sent to replace the lost troops. The post was decommissioned and left to the elements in 1891 by order of Congress after a new Fort Abraham Lincoln was built on the other side of the river. In 1932, many of the decaying buildings on the old fort began to be rebuilt, but Custer's home wasn't rebuilt until 1989. Many historical objects from the original inhabitants were placed in the newer buildings, and the paranormal happenings began. Staff and visitors both have reported paranormal experiences from the beginning, and as more and more hauntings were reported at Fort Lincoln. The most active building at the fort is said to be Custer's House. There are documented clear EVPs as well as apparitions. Several paranormal investigator groups have captured the clear EVPs from one specific female. Other reports from Custer's House are various apparitions, unexplainable cold spots, doors opening and closing on their own, and lights turning on and off with no explanation. Horse hooves stomping, women wailing, and guard footsteps have also been reported. The apparition of Lieutenant Colonel George Custer himself has been seen throughout the house, as well as a woman wearing a black dress looking out the second floor window, whom many believe to be Libby. While driving down an old dusty road through the Satiate woods, you will notice the road becoming more and more narrow. At the narrowest part of the road is a tiny, decrepit bridge seemingly lost in time. This is where the White Lady can be found. There are a couple versions to the White Lady Lane legend. One version says that a young woman became pregnant out of wedlock by a man she didn't like. She tried to keep the pregnancy a secret from her strict religious parents, but eventually they found out and forced her to marry the man. Shortly after the wedding, she miscarried the baby. Overcome with crippling sorrow and depression after the loss, she wandered away through the woods to find refuge in death. The next morning, her husband awoke to find his bride missing. Her body was found hanging from a rope underneath the narrow bridge in the Satiate woods. Another version says that a peddler came to town to sell his wagon full of household goods. Not long after arriving, he met and fell in love with a young woman. He went out to her house to ask permission to marry her, but the mother refused at first. After begging for their daughter's hand, the mother told the peddler that in 1 year's time, for a wagon full of his valuables, he would be allowed to marry their daughter. A year later, the peddler returned, but was denied again. Angry, he snuck into the family's house late at night and shot the girl while she slept. According to legend, she didn't die immediately, but wandered into the woods and fell dead by the bridge. Through the years, people have claimed that the White Lady roams this stretch of road close to the bridge. Some have even reported seeing her hanging. All instances say that if you draw closer to her, she will just disappear. The Yunker farm was built in 1876 by Newton Whitman, who, along with his wife, raised 8 children here and built a schoolhouse on the property. In 1905, John and Elizabeth Yunker bought the farm, which stayed in their family until 1968. They raised 10 children here before donating the property to Fargo Park District. The current Children's Museum officially opened in November of 1989. According to reports from staff and visitors, there are a few different spirits wandering the Yunker farm property. The most often reported ghost is of a woman the staff call Vanessa, but many people believe her to actually be Elizabeth Yunker. It is believed that her love for the children draws her to the second-story exhibits, which are designed for the younger children to visit. Staff have reported seeing the friendly presence after closing. There is a much sadder tale to come from the museum of a young girl who drowned in the well. Unauthorized ghost hunters on the property claim to have seen the young girl wearing all white, standing beside the well, and visitors to the well have reported feeling shortness of breath or chest pains, which are believed to be from the little girl's spirit showing them how she died. The museum is a great place to visit, but don't ask about investigating the property. The staff prefer the ghost stories be kept to a minimum to prevent scaring the children. Haren Sanatorium is a former tuberculosis hospital at the foothills of the Turtle Mountains. Thousands of TB patients resided and died here between 1909 and the 1940s. Before the advent of antibiotics, a common remedy used on TB patients would be to cause the collapse of a lung, which itself caused many patients to suffer even more. Years later, the Haren Sanatorium became home for the developmentally disabled. As with most facilities, there were rumors of understaffing, mistreatment, and neglect. The sanatorium came under fire like hundreds of others around the country and eventually closed its doors in 1987. The sanatorium has a very uneasy atmosphere. There is a very uncomfortable feel to the whole area. Being secluded high up in the mountains combined with the sight of a very decayed buildings add to the creepiness of the location. Through the years, people have reported a variety of unexplainable happenings, from orbs and apparitions to being touched and sudden nausea striking them without explanation. Faces in the window and objects moving on their own are also common. There are several buildings on the property that are connected by underground tunnels, which staff use to move patients between buildings without having to go out into the harsh, cold weather. According to reports, it is in the tunnels where the apparitions are usually reported. Patients of days past have been seen walking silently through the dark tunnels, then disappearing. The building that now houses the Sage Hill Bed and Breakfast was built in 1928 as a schoolhouse named White School. It was one of the first schools in South Dakota and named after Samuel White, a colonel who led the battalion during the Spanish-American War. The school was advanced for its time and even had a hot shower for the girls and boys and a wind generator for power. In 1968, the school closed due to the declining population. In 1996, the building was bought and renovated into Sage Hill Bed and Breakfast. During renovations, workers often reported feeling that they were not alone. They would smell the heavy aroma of a cigar, even though nobody was smoking. As some of the walls were being torn down, they reported hearing strange sounds similar to moaning. Guests and owners have reported items being moved or just simply disappearing, only to be found somewhere else, shadows moving around them and then quickly disappearing, toilets flushing on their own, lights turning on and off by themselves, and unexplainable cold spots. There have also been reports of apparitions seen, especially in the basement, and most people refuse to go down there. In the small town of Medora, North Dakota, George Fitzgerald built a hotel named the Metropolitan in 1884. It was named so in anticipation of a population growth that never happened. In 1903, the name was changed to the Rough Riders Hotel in honor of Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders service in the Spanish-American War. Roosevelt was also the first president to visit Medora. The hotel has been operated by several different families over the years and functions as both a bar and a restaurant. Through the years, guests have reported encountering the ghost of a young boy on the top floor. Many people have also reported being woken up by the sounds of children playing in the hallway, but when checked, no one is there. Disembodied laughter and toilets flushing on their own have also been reported. To date, no historical events have been found to explain this otherworldly presence. Fort Totten was established in 1867, serving as a post for soldiers guarding the transportation routes through the reservation. It was also a meeting spot for the expedition to survey the United States and Canada border. When the fort was decommissioned in 1891, it was transformed into a boarding school for the local Native American children. Between 1935 and 1939, the school was temporarily a tuberculosis preventatorium, a place where children who were susceptible to or already contracted the illness were housed. Many of the children who contracted TB died at the fort. When the program was shut down, the site returned to being a community and day school for the reservation. Fort Totten became a North Dakota State Historic Site in 1960 and was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1971. Today, the fort is reportedly haunted. Many employees, both current and former, have reported seeing the ghost of children wandering around the property. Eerie, distant sounds of children laughing have also been reported. In the boys' dormitory, people have claimed to encounter a human-shaped shadows moving across the wall and then disappearing. Psychics who have visited the dorm report that the building has a lot of angry, violent energy. The Totten Trail Historic Inn and Bed and Breakfast on the property was originally the building that housed the fort's officers and families. According to legends, one man and one woman died here before renovations began, and their spirits remain. Guests staying at the inn have reported feeling like they were being followed or have seen the apparitions following them. Asa Fisher had the 2.5-story Victorian mansion built in 1884 as a private residence. In 1893, he sold the house for $5,000 to the state of North Dakota. Between 1893 and 1960, the mansion was home to 20 governors and their families. In 1975, it was given to the State Historical Society and remodeled to look like it did in 1893. The first recorded death at the mansion is of Governor Frank Briggs in 1898, who died of tuberculosis. In 1907, Governor Burke renovated the ballroom attic space and made half of it into a playroom for his children, and the rest was turned into an apartment for his butler and cook, Tom Lee. He would insist the mansion was haunted by the former Governor Briggs and even refused to sleep in the attic apartment alone. According to reports, the old master bedroom where Governor Briggs died is a hot spot for paranormal activity. The door to the room is said to open and close by itself, and curtains move when no one is in the room or there is no breeze. The heavy closet door will slam shut on its own, and footsteps are heard on the stairs. Staff and visitors have claimed to hear footsteps on the stairs leading to the basement and the attic. One visitor reported hearing a disembodied voice telling her not to go up in the attic. Riverside Cemetery is not just a place where families come to visit lost loved ones. It is also a place of beauty where you can walk, take photographs, or visit the graves of prominent writers Thomas Wolfe and O. Henry. What many don't realize is this beautiful historic cemetery has a creepier side. Paranormal researchers and ghost hunters have reported that they have recorded knocking sounds by the doors of several mausoleums. Visitors have also reported disembodied voices that seem to come from headstones and the feeling of being watched when no one else is visible. North Dakota is home to a river monster that resides in the Missouri River. Unlike other lake and river monsters, which are usually indifferent to people or friendly, the Miniwashitu is something you may want to avoid. According to legends, if a person sees the creature emerge from the water, they will lose their minds and die. The beast is said to have red hair like a buffalo, one eye like a cyclops, a horn on its head, and a long, jagged spine that sticks out of its back. Many people have claimed to have seen the outline of the monster swimming below the water, but only one person has reported to have actually seen it rise out of the water, and that lived long enough to describe the beast. The man did lose his mind shortly after seeing and describing it, and not long after that, he died.